So I haven't gotten to make as much content for YouTube as much as I would like to do, and that's because it's springtime's coming to an end, and I've been trying to. I live on a big enough piece of property where I can actually grow some stuff, and so that's what I've been working on. I did not come from a farming background or even a gardening background, so I've had to learn a lot of stuff as I go along. Last year, I just tried to throw a bunch of random stuff in different parts of my yard with different types of soils and moisture contents, and I learned a lot from that and kind of learned what would definitely work really easily and what wouldn't work at all. And one of the things that I decided to do this year was to try sprouting, which I didn't do last year. Which is where you start something just to get the seed to germinate, and then you move it into a bigger container to get the plant stronger before finally putting out into the ground and then trying to get a yield from it. This has been interesting because I had a couple ideas that I wanted to try, and so that's some of the things that I want to show you guys. One of the things that I noticed from... I had some blackberry plants that I'd put out in the yard, and I think the roots got eaten by moles, maybe. Anyway, I only managed to I saved 3 of them, if I'm being honest, and then 2 of them got eaten by my cats because I left them uncovered and unprotected, and the cats decided to eat my blackberry plants. But before they did that, what I was doing was I had them in a plastic container that was turned upside down, and I was using it as basically a greenhouse. This worked pretty good, and so I decided to try to expand on that idea when it came to sprouting. So I'm going to show you guys like the what I used, which was the shallowest possible container. And to start the sprouts, I used recycled paper egg cartons with a little bit of topsoil in there, and then 1 seed per pod. And then I would put that out there. This seemed to work really well because the paper would hold moisture. So when I watered it once a day, the paper would actually hold the moisture and it could draw from that as it went. And then it was, when it came time to transplant that into the next stage, into the next planter, you could get the paper wet and literally pluck the whole thing off. I tried using scissors, and I tried using just tearing it, and just tearing it was the easiest way to do it. Then once you put it in the ground, I mean, eventually the paper just decomposes and goes away on its own, and the roots can just take over the soil. And again, so trying to do this as economical as possible, I recycled 1-gallon milk jugs, and I cut the bottoms out of them and drilled drainage holes in the bottom, and then put mulch in the bottom of that. So most dumps you can get mulch because any kind of dead trees or anything that's removed takes up excess space at a landfill, so they usually will just chip it up. So yeah, you can get free mulch at most dumps, most landfills, because they end up chipping up a lot of biological material instead of using it to waste space in the landfills. It's more economical, and it works for you. My advice would be not to put it really close to your house because it's just a whatever they chipped up. So there's no quality control of the type of wood or biological debris that it is, and it's not treated, so you don't know if there's insects or any kind of termites or anything like that could then later infest your house. So all this stuff that I'm using is at least 100 yards away from my house. But I put drain holes in the bottom of these gallon jugs, and then I put the mulch in to help with the drainage, but it's biodegradable. Then I put topsoil on top of that, and then I'll rip out my little paper cups with my seeds started in them, and I bury that in the topsoil, and then I give that another couple weeks to get a little bigger and to start building a root ball up underneath it. From that point, I can transfer it to the garden. Now, what I noticed the first year that I started experimenting with this is that the deer in my area are healthy, to say the least. So I needed something that would keep the deer out, and ideally something that would keep the birds away. Usually you can scare birds away. I've seen other gardeners do with something shiny and distracting. Like you can hang a pie pan from just one end so that it blows in the wind, and then that will actually the reflection off of it will scare crows and stuff like that away from nibbling at your plants. But the biggest concern was deer, because they'll come up and just start chomping on the leaves. So what I found was some deer netting, which is just a really cheap plastic netting, and I built a frame out of PVC to build basically an aircraft hangar. I honestly think I went a little too big. It may get smaller next year as I expand, and so I can have more for the same whatever. But it's just a PVC. It's a 3/4 PVC pipe. It's anchored at the bottom. I took 4-foot long pieces of rebar and drove them 2 feet into the ground. And the part that sticks up, you just put the pipe right over it. There's no, because you're just using netting, there's nothing to grab the air for it to act like a sail. So as long as it's glued together really good, it's not going to just fly off. It actually just stays down there. I haven't had any problem with that. I have had problems with the glue holding the PVC together, because I didn't want to glue it together excessively, which was a mistake. I should have really committed to it, glued it together really good. That's come apart, but once you've got the netting up there, the netting kind of holds it together, so it's real easy to put more glue on it and then just stick it back together. It's an experiment, and it's worked out really well so far. But I went in there, and I've got that part of the soil ready. So there's rows for things I can plant directly into the soil. And then I used a reclaimed fence gate that was a horse gate that came with the property when we bought it, but was broken and the welds had snapped. And I kind of just zip tied it back together and then propped it inside the garden. And I'm going to use it as a trellis for a support for my black crim tomatoes and my sweet cucumbers. So I have not gotten any footage yet of anything in the ground. When stuff starts going into the ground, I'm going to do an update, and you guys can see what has worked and what hasn't worked. If you have any questions or tips, for the love of God, if you've got any gardening tips, I would love to hear them. Anything that you see that looks interesting or looks wrong, let me know in the comments. And just like, share, subscribe. I mean, we're gardening this year, and hopefully when we have breaks, we can make other goofy videos, and we can make some video game stuff. But for right now, I'm really trying to get the garden stabilized so that we can put food in the ground and hopefully have a big old healthy harvest of pickles and tomatoes, I guess. We'll see how it comes out. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I will see you guys later, and I don't know. Bye now.